Chapter 14, Secret School. My father wanted me to continue to improve my English, so he encouraged me to watch a DVD that one of the journalists in Islamabad had given me, a TV program called Ugly Betty. I loved Betty, with her big braces and her big heart. I was in awe watching her and her friends as they walked freely down the streets of New York, with no veils covering their faces and no need for men to accompany them. My favorite part, though, was seeing Betty's father cook for her instead of vice versa. But I learned another lesson watching the show. Although Betty and her friends had certain rights, women in the United States were still not completely equal. Their images were used to sell things. In some ways, I decided women are showpieces in American society too. When I watched, I looked at their hems cut so short and their necklines so low. I wondered if there was a clothing shortage in the United States. How crazy it was that this little plastic disc with images of a girl in big glasses and shiny braces was illegal. And how odd, too, to watch as Ugly Betty and her friends were free to walk the streets of New York City while we were trapped inside with nothing to do. Another show I was given was a British comedy from the 1970s. It's called Mind Your Language, and about a classroom full of adults from all over the world trying to learn English. Madame Marianne gave it to my father, but I watched it, and it made me laugh and laugh. It's not good for learning English, though, because everyone on the show speaks it so poorly. But it's where I learned some of my favorite sayings like jolly good and okay and excuse me and that's all right, meaning that's all right. Meanwhile, my little brother Atal and his friends had started playing a new game. Instead of playing Parpatuni, he and his friends were playing Army versus Taliban. Children all over our neighborhood made pretend weapons out of whatever they could find. They fashioned guns out of sticks or folded paper and grenades out of old water bottles. War and terrorism had become child's play. Sometimes my own little brothers, unaware of what it really meant, would pretend to be Taliban militants or army soldiers. They'd even set up bunkers on our roof where they acted out a battle. One day I saw Atal in the backyard furiously digging a hole. "What are you doing?" I asked. I shuddered when he gave me his answer. In the most normal, natural tone of voice, "Making a grave," he said. All the while, I kept up my blog post as Gul Makai. 4 days after the girls' school was shut down, Fazlullah's men destroyed 5 more schools. "I'm quite surprised," I wrote. "These schools had already been closed. Why did they also need to be destroyed?" Meanwhile, the army was doing nothing about it but looking busy. Soldiers sat in their bunkers, smoking cigarettes, shelling all day, and firing cannons at the hills all night long. But in the mornings, the news would come not that the army had gained ground, but that the Taliban had slaughtered 2 or 3 people. The people of Swat continued going to watch the floggings announced on Radio Mullah, and girls who only wanted to learn were trapped inside their homes that had become like jails. During those dark, dull days, we heard rumblings about secret talks with the Taliban. Then, out of nowhere, Fazlullah agreed to lift the ban on elementary school for girls. It was all right for little girls to go to school, he said, but he still insisted that girls over 10 should stay home in Purdah. I was 11, but I wasn't going to let that stop me. Besides, I could easily pass as a 10-year-old. Madame Mariam sent out a message to all the girls in the upper school. If they wanted to defy this new edict, they would open the school doors. "Just don't wear your uniforms," she said. "Dress in everyday clothes, plain shalwar kameez that won't attract attention." So the next day, I put on everyday clothes and left home with my books hidden under my shawl and my head held high. But Mingora had changed while school was closed for that month. Now the streets were ghostly quiet. Stores were shuttered, houses were dark, and even the normal din of traffic was a mere murmur. More than a third of the population had fled. My friends and I were a little bit scared as we made our way to the school on that first forbidden day. But we had a plan. If a Talib stopped us, we would just say, "We are in grade 4." When I got to school that morning, I was more elated than ever to walk through the gate. Madame Mariam was waiting there for us, giving each girl a hug and telling us we were brave. She was brave too, of course. She was taking a big risk being there. Girls like us might be reprimanded. A grown woman could be beaten or killed. This secret school, she said, is our silent protest. The question for chapter 14 says, what happened in Mingora over that month that schools were closed? So what happened in the city of Mingora over that month as schools were closed? You're going to answer that question on Padlet.